today's announcement is about 2 new series. And Red Dwarf 12, we're having a nice break of, I think, 3 weeks. And then we'll go straight into Red Dwarf 12 at the beginning of 2016.
Before we started, I thought, my God, we'll never get through 12. We've done 8 is the most we've done. I remember that being absolutely, we were slaughtered at the end of that. So I thought 12 is just stupid what's going. But then, in fact, we did have a month off between the 2 of them, which was a real blessing.
One series of Red Dwarf is, pretty stressful. 2 back-to-back, we had to do a will.
Criticus. That was much talked about before we even started doing the series, because Doug had announced at a convention that in one episode everybody would be a mechanoid, which, that's the first we heard about it.
There is a show that they've always wanted to do, though, where for some reason they all get to be crying. And we are doing that show.
It was an idea that the boys always wanted to do. They didn't actually know what would happen in the episode. They just all wanted to be Crichton.
The casting with the fine, fantastic outfit that is Millennium, on the same day I had the Rimmer Monster, that was a whole head cast. That actually wasn't as uncomfortable as I thought it was going to be.
We'll be taking a scan of him, which is a pretty instant process where we can replicate his head very, very accurately. And then he'll have a 3D model, which can be printed, so that they can make a cast of that instead to make his new prosthetics. It's the coolest thing ever.
Look at the cameras.
Yeah, I had issues. I had a sort of choking panic attack, and then it's tragic. I don't want to talk about it. It's too sad. I met someone, basically, who said you can have your head scanned.
The system, the way it works, it projects the fringe pattern on the face, and the high-speed camera captures that pattern in 0.3 of a second. And then from the fringe pattern images, we can create the depth image, which creates the 3D model. 3, 2, 1.
And then I think they were trying to save some money, and because the other 3 were had never done it before, so they didn't know what it was like, they just went, chuck a load of gloop on them, it would be much cheaper.
You put 2 straws up your nose, put it around your mouth, so you breathe through your nose, sit there for about 20 minutes, it gets a bit warm while it sets, and then they take it off. No big deal. Robert Llewellyn. I'm going to have to give him a stiff talking to.
Really weird sensation. Right, I don't want to be Robert Llewellyn.
There are aspects where you combine a human body with a mechanoid that are really unpleasant, that you don't want to divulge. But yeah, no, Craig had some serious sweat build-ups.
Build a bit of this, 1 second, Richard.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Chris. That's very cool.
Look at that. Is it coming out?
Thank you.
On the second day in the mask, they put a skull cap on me and then put the mask on. And then, of course, there was nowhere for the sweat, because it normally go out of your head. But there was nowhere for it to go because I had a skull cap on. So it was coming out my ears by the cup load, I mean, proper by the cup load, and it was coming out of my eyes and my nose. Sweat was escaping anywhere out of my head that it could possibly escape.
I thought they were heroic, the other 3 guys, because they'd never had that on before. They wore those masks for a long time. They shot for hours and hours in the studio where it was really hot, and they just did it. I think they were all highly relieved when the masks came off, and they all went, I don't know how you do it. Like day after day after day, they were very sweet about it. Craig thought, it proves you're insane, Bobby. You've been doing that for 27 years. Only an idiot would do that. 1 day was enough for me, man.
The novelty does, for me, certainly quickly wore off. When you actually have to start performing, you do feel as if you've got to perform more, you've got to give it more to get beyond the barrier that you've got around you. You've got to sort of overcome that somehow. And that's where I think Robert does extra specially well, because his performance just comes right out of it.
Who just happens to do all the smoky jobs.
They always wanted to be Crichton and do that mechanoid impression they all were desperate to do. Come to me and I'll make your dreams come true.
Like one of those. Yeah. So just working backwards, we're not going to necessarily shoot it in this space.
Laura gets to pin Danny John Jules up against the wall by his neck like that, and I think me, Chris, and Robert all volunteered to do that scene.
Danny being pinned up, that was a great piece of classic Red Dwarf improvisation, you know. It was a nice little sequence, and it's always good to see Danny getting sort of thrust up against a wall in an angry move like that, but no, I mean, he made that work.
You can go
If I stay on tiptoes, then it won't look like I'm walking. It'll just look like I'm just being...
Right, being...
Yeah. And the more...
That was a very popular scene, Danny being strangled. In fact, great credit to Danny, because we were thinking of harnesses and all sorts of wire rigs and all sorts. And Danny went, oh, no, I know how we do this. We get some steps and I'll run up backwards. She'll slam me into the wall and it will look absolutely brilliant.
You can't beat choreography. And good comedy, you need to do some musical theatre, really. Anyone can tell a gag, but to add physicality to it is another story, and I think that always helps in comedy.
The way he managed to kind of use a box, and if you just see what the camera sees, it really looks like, because was that Aretto that did that got him, yeah. So she's, no, Laura is not like a muscle woman. I mean, she's a very fit young woman, but she's not, she wouldn't be able to lift Danny up by the neck, but he does it so it really looks like she's going, and he's like,
and I rip off Craig's hand off Lister's hand as well, so yeah, and I hold, it's tough nut.
Put him down, Aretto.
You know, there was a lot of jigging of props and ramps and, you know, all kinds of stuff to get that one shot. And that's basically, you look at all the work you put into it for something that lasts for literally 1 second. Bam.
the design of the posters, the MILF posters were the MILF posters. You say that because when we were on the set, we're going, so when are the MILFs coming in later? You know, it's like it just becomes one of those things.
Craig Charles, of course, said, you should make it MILF. And I said, oh, that is funny. So I told Doug, and Doug went, yeah, that is funny. And I said, right, we'll need to think of an I, though. We'll need to think of an I. And so I was going, Mechanoid Initiative, and I spent about half an hour asking everybody, okay, think of an I, think of an I. All the banners had already been made up, MLFs. And I said to Craig, oh, it's a really good idea, Craig, but it doesn't really, no one can think of an I.
And I just went, intergalactic? And he went, oh, yeah.
We walk in there and you think you're in Russia, you know, during the Cold War. It was just like you were expecting, you know, 1,000 troops to march through any minute. But what you have are mechanoids.
But it was that style, that sort of Soviet style of sort of workers thing, and it was that clever, really annoyingly clever of Doug to find that twist where, you know, on one level I would fully support the fact that the people who actually produce the things deserve, you know, I'm basically a kind of spiritual communist, but I'm old enough to have seen communism in action, having been to Russia, and you go, difficult really to admit this under Margaret Thatcher, but this doesn't work. On the surface for Crichton, going to this, you know, liberated mechanoids was just the most glorious thing in the world, and they were free at last, and then you kind of go, oh, it's not quite as simple, because there was a class structure within MILFdom.
Take him away and prepare.
For what?
All who rise against the MILF face trial by gladiatorian.
The guy that played Wind, who was the sort of leader, was just perfectly pitched performance, because he was a sort of, you know, very humble and small and quiet and didn't shout and wasn't sort of bossy, but was really controlling. And I so met old lefties like Wind.
I tried to keep my voice sort of fairly calm, but, you know, so therefore more sinister. When my father used to tell me off, he didn't shout at me. He'd go very quiet. What did you say? Like that, and the whole room would hush. So I guess I've been using that.
When I first, when I went up for this job, the character was she's quite a still character because she's a baddie. But then I looked in the mirror and I got the mask on and realised that actually I had to move my face loads for it to read, for anything to read. And then also I have sunglasses on as well, so I hope it reads. There's lots of mouth moving to try and... Yeah, and it's all in the physicality, it's all in the moving of the head and the body to try and express what you're saying.
In this episode, they get to be mechanoids as well, and so they're really aping the way he does it. So I didn't want to sort of rob their gag, as it were. And also I thought I'd give it a slightly more gentle, leader thing, sort of. Slightly in charge rather than a more bumbling.
We'd rehearsed this and and I was really concerned that week because I just went, oh my God, they don't know what it's like. Because they're all being sort of happy and jolly and just sort of walking around and doing it, and then they're going to get covered in so much stuff. And there was so many makeup people, and they were all in there for hours, and hundreds of extra makeup people to do the makeup, because it was, of course, a huge task to get everyone covered in that. And then it was just the weirdest thing.
It's disgusting, outrageous, offensive.
One of my favourite scenes of the whole series is the kind of group therapy scene with all the mechanoids sitting around reassuring each other that they don't have funny shaped heads. And Marcus, who played the chairbot Excalibur, I'm Excalibur, welcome. It was just, that was an absolute joy. He was just brilliant.
Here we go. From the top. And action.
Hello. I used to be known as DB9HK4, but now my name's Excalibur.
It's the support group for mechs who've been abused. Oh, that makes it sound a lot more serious than it is. They've been treated badly. That's the phrase we're going to use. From people who treat them like Lister and Rimmer and the Cat treat mechs and treat Crichton. So I'm the leader of that group. And I don't know, I'm not necessarily, because Crichton's got quite jerky movements, and I think mine's going to be slightly more fluid and a bit more like his other head. He's angry Northern Head, except I'm going to be a calm Northern Head. Yeah.
And I love the fact that it wasn't that no one was trying to do a sort of Crichton impression or something. They all had regional accents from the UK. Now we're all here together. Now say after me, I don't have a funny shaped head.
I've got a number of counsellors in my family, so my mum did it for a while, and two of my sisters do it. So if they see this, they're probably gonna, tear me a new one in a really caring, counselling way.
That what's said in this room
stays in this room.
Okay.
Like being a mechanoid. I don't have to become an officer anymore. Compete with my brothers. Envy, ambition, that acid ball of resentment I carried around with me every day, it's gone.
We're all sort of becoming mechanoids. Chris Rimmer becomes a mechanoid really quickly, and he's sort of quite happy. Me and the cat resist a little bit more. The cat turns before me, and I'm still doing all these Robert Llewellyn's stock in trade sort of. I'm trying to fight it.
Mr. Lister, sir, hold on! Hold on, sir! Hold on, I can see it going, sir! It shows!
I'm rather enjoying this mopping. I feel so calm and tranquil.
Let it move!
They went this way, mistress.
Come on!
All this business about wanting to be an officer, up the ziggurat, lickety-split, sort of, astronavigation exams, everything. And at the end of the day, he's probably most at home with his hands on a mop. Bit of a come down for the lad.
That was inspired by when I've got masses of deadlines and I'm looking out of the window and I see people doing normal jobs or even a dog. And I go, God, I wish I could be a dog. It'd be great to be a dog. You wouldn't have to bloody get up at 5 in the morning and write, a script.
We did learn, of course, who his real father was. So maybe we're finding out slowly, series by series, the real Rimmer.
Gentlemen, to Rimmer, a moon rich in helium-7, the most valuable gas in the universe.
To Rimmer, so full of gas.
Green screen on the moon and stuff like that. It'll be interesting to see how that works out. And of course, he's spend all your time waiting for the guy to like brush the sand back so there's no footsteps. And then you do the thing, oh, gotta brush the sand again, you know. Gotta go again, oh, brush the sand again. Oh, gonna have to go again, all right, mate, just spend your whole time with a bloody helmet on, sweating your love spuds off.
That was the episode I became very aware how seriously all the HODs were taking the show, really getting in the minds of each ship. You know, Ed, it would have been so easy for him to say, look, I want to keep things moody and, you know, dark. He went, no, you know, this is supposed to be a ship free of criticism, so I'm almost going to do the things that I would criticise, you know, really bright overhead lighting. Heath and his guys went very psychedelic.
I think it's the campest thing I've ever done. I was quite surprised when Doug came up to me and said he'd like it to be quite psychedelic, and we talked about lava lamps, and yes, he went for it. And initially, that's the first outing of that revamped corridor. He took the Sensara corridor, and then we completely changed it and made it a bigger and more of an adaptable space, which has served us really well.
It's a genius episode and it's a genius idea. In this country, it's an absolute kind of genetic trait that we're all critical and cynical and going, oh, won't work, it's all rubbish. And you can imagine, like, you decide, well, no, we're just going to make criticism illegal. You can only be positive. From now on, we're going to move forward positively.
I'm fascinated by criticism. I genuinely do believe it is addictive. It does release powerful chemicals that make you feel good about yourself because it makes you feel superior.
Good.
And I think in a way, I am a pusher. I've given a lot of people a lot of good shit.
When we get pulled over by the crit cop, have you been criticising, sir?
Oh, we had been here filming, still open all hours, and there was a lot of excitement amongst the cast, especially over the fact that Red Dwarf was setting up in the studio next door to us, but we were absolutely gutted that we sort of crossed over by about a week. And then we were out, so we were nipping in and getting, you know what I mean, sneak peeks at the set, getting very excited. And then I got the call to come in myself, which is fantastic, you know what I mean? As a fan, it's a big L tick off the bucket list.
Pretty in Pink, the one and only Johnny Vegas. Genius, really. I know that's an oft-used word, but there were moments when he was working in this where I actually forgot that I was working as well, and I was just watching him develop his performance.
Costume is absolutely... Apparently, word has it, these costumes were made for a Monty Python film, and were never used, is the inside line. So there's a little bit of comic history that comes with them. Well, you know the old adage, be safe, be seen. There's no way I'll get knocked over.
I repeal the law. Critics, I need some help here. Train them! Train them all!
Jamie Chapman as Ziggy, and just the most incredibly ridiculous costume you've ever seen.
It is a pretty flamboyant costume. This is a first for me. It's pretty big. It's almost crinoline-like. So when I had to sit down in the diner, I had to find out that apparently women, when they wear crinolines, have to pull it up at the back, otherwise it sits under your chin.
An unlikely performance in terms of just where he pitched it, but it just worked. It was absolutely right for a planet where criticism is banned.
I didn't know I was going to do that until we did it, because I just felt it's such a childish moment. You know that kids do that with their jumper? That's where it came from. I just thought, oh, he's going to drag this. How could you be so rude about my painting? I didn't know he was the captain. When he first started, he was just going to be in one scene. And we got the audition bit through. And I was thinking, oh, what would be the voice here? And the voice that was in my head when I read it was, do you remember Penelope Pitstop? With Paul Lind doing that, you know, damn, blast and damn Penelope Pitstop. And I thought, oh, something like that, where you really elongate the vowels.
Difficult shoot, this one. Bobby goes off ill on the Thursday when he's already in makeup and he's already in costume. And then begins to feel really unwell. Ambulances are called or taken to the doctors, stuff like this. Thinks he's got a kidney stone, he's in agony. It turns out, really, that he's just got a bit of a leaky cock.
We shot a few scenes and I was just leaning on things and trying to get through the day. And eventually the authorities came in and went, you get your mask off, go down hospital, you know. And I was going, no, I'll be all right, Because I mean, the thing is that I wasn't being butchered, but I just wanted to get that day done. Then I could be ill. You know, I didn't want to have to kind of come back and do it again. You know, that's, you really, when you're in the mask, you just want to work. You just want to finish that day's work.
I was always concerned we didn't put any pressure on them too much, because if they weren't well, if you don't adapt to that straight away, then it could be worse.
I remember Jamie, who played Ziggy, he'd done all his pre-recorded scenes, and he was on his way on the M25 on his way back home. We had to call him back, do all those, just to film something, you know, because we're up against it now, run out of time. So Ziggy comes back, does his scenes. It means that Johnny Vegas has then got to do all his scenes live.
I am doing a lot more in front of the audience. There was an issue yesterday with a suspected kidney stone or something. I got the call as I was coming into the car to do some pre-records. And then, obviously, the first thing I did was fell to my knees and started to pray for him.
One of the cruel things that happened, which is in the panoply of the cruel humour of Red Dwarf, was in front of the audience. Craig explained why it was taking a long time.
I'd just like to say something. You know, Robert there, that scene that we just filmed there, you've got to give Robert a round of applause because he'd never even rehearsed that. He had to go to the hospital with a leaking cock.
Which I thought was unnecessary. He does, because he's such a nice man. He's very nice. No, don't do that anymore.
I was interested in psychopaths, and I was really surprised that you can be a psychopath and not kill people, because I thought, actually, you had to kill people. And then when you read that CEOs and bankers and businessmen don't have empathy and can't empathise, it's like, oh, this is really interesting. So you're not necessarily just a bad serial killer killing guy. Maybe is there a cure for evil, and what would happen, and what issues would we have forgiving the evil people? Because it's going to be tough, let's be honest.
It's nearly a gag there for you.
Passion fruit? No, that's the other one.
Craig.
Sorry, mate.
Maybe if you threw it to me, I caught it.
Great fun to film. Ryan, who played Hitler, great to work with. I mean, great to work with.
It's because I'm Hitler, isn't it?
He really did bring Hitler to new levels. In a sense, he almost did make you feel sorry for Hitler. He just played it with such that sort of element of campness in the performance. Just made it work superbly, because it was clipped Teutonic campness. The evil was there, and yet the sort of cutesy-cuddly kind of, or mock cutesy-cuddly element of a potential Hitler being cured was there as well. All the sort of, who stole my Zippo? You know, you think he's going to sort of go into one, you know?
I think it's the idea that he's been cured, reprogrammed. He's exploring himself now, so he still has some of the old elements in terms of the way that Hitler once was, but he is now free to sort of, and he's playing about with being a nice guy and perhaps exploring his arty side and his feminine side and all these sorts of things.
Ryan actually got in touch with me over Twitter. That's how he got the part. And he just tweeted me one day and said, I'm a massive fan, and I was just watching Red Dwarf 10 again and chuckling along, and look, I'd love to be considered. So I passed, you know, his details on to Doug, and Doug really liked what he saw, and it was just about finding a part. And then Linda said, what about Hitler? And I thought, oh, what a terrible idea. I mean, you've got this great, young, kind of funny, you know, character actor, and, you know, Hitler, it's just not right for him. Also, he's too young. And she said, no, I think he'll be very good. So I said, OK, let's offer it to him. And we offered it to him, and he just came back and went, Hitler, I love it, let's go, let's do it.
This is why it's such a good performance from Ryan. He actually makes you feel sorry for Hitler. He does it so well. You know, he didn't have lunch or anything like that. He was practicing walks and turns and stuff like that. He put a lot of thought into this performance. He was absolutely brilliant in it.
When you see Lister and Adolf Hitler rocking out you know, just with some electric guitars. It's just not even, you know, you can't compare it to anything.
There's going to be, I think, one of the an iconic Red Dwarf scene where Hitler rocks out on guitar with a Lister to the Wanderer, which I chose as well.
It was going to be a different song, and we asked for permission and got permission, but then we got scared and said we should just, and went back and said we just need to point out that actually people singing this will be Dave Lister, character from Red Dwarf, and Adolf Hitler. Although it will turn out to be not the Adolf Hitler, but a robot playing Hitler. Is it still okay to get permission? And the message came back, no. And then we went through, I think it was literally 20 songs, and everybody said no, which just makes you feel if Hitler were reincarnated somehow, there's no way you'd be able to be a recording star.
And then suddenly we got the rights to the Happy Wanderer, and actually it turned out to be great. Because it's so stupid and sort of Germanic and Teutonic and all of that, we ended up sort of doing a rocking out version.
I want to go a-wandering along the mountain track, and as I go I like to sing my rucksack on my back. Of Alderie, of Aldera. I mean, it was just the most bizarre thing. Dracula!
Back in your box.
Yeah, there's always that joy when you think, you know, we're shooting today, and then you put your mask on and your costume on, and then on top of that, there's this green sort of sock that's pulled, so we could shoot the Crichton with no head. So there's always an extra layer of discomfort. And it had lots of fluff that got on your eyes. So I was like, oh, so then it up your nose, even, you know, you're going, oh God, cover me in jelly, why not?
Like looking through your auntie's tights.
We didn't do any gantry work, but we did some very steep stairs up in the vent room. Yeah, she's always fun in Crichton costume. I always like it, if I'm going down steep stairs, I want Craig in front of me because he does all his own stunts. So if I fall, I've got something relatively soft to land on. We all got captured and Rimmer was buried alive. The vasectomy machine... Sorry. I wasn't there for the shooting of that, but I remember the vasectomy machine. And then Crichton has his head taken off and shoved on a mop, and a cat is drowned. And so that was the scene where we were looking down at finding a cat being drowned. Drowning a cat, of course.
Wait! What order are you going to kill him in?
Does it matter?
It matters to me.
Could I possibly suggest alphabetical?
As long as it's first name alphabetical, and I get to do it.
Doug always had this idea about, you know, curing evil and empathy, and that fundamentally changed quite late on the ending. The original idea was Telford was really Hitler.
Professor Telford. Where did he go?
They just didn't feel right to have Hitler twice. We knew if you'd spent most of the episode with this nice Hitler, you know, that was where the fun and the comedy was. And for Telford to then reveal himself as the real Hitler, it felt like you either had to go for someone more evil, and it's hard to find someone more evil than Hitler, or you had to go almost supernatural, you know, I am the devil himself or something, which obviously isn't Red Dwarf. So that needed a big rethink quite late on. What Doug ended up with the character study on Cat being a psychopath was a far better ending.
When they're doing the psychopath test, as an audience, you look at that and you think, it's not going to be one of the psychopaths, it's got to be someone else. And that's why everyone looks at Rimmer.
Well, there is indeed a psychopath among us. According to the psycho scan, they display all the telltale signs.
And you've got Messalina, you've got Hitler, you've got Vlad the Impaler, you've got Uncle Joe Stalin, and the results are in, and everyone turns and looks at Rimmer. And I just thought, oh, thing of beauty.
The fact that I'm with Messalina and Stalin and Hitler and Vlad the Impaler standing there, and, you know, we're wondering, you know, if the psychopath is actually Rimmer is a compliment to Rimmer over the decades. You know, if my psychopathia could be comparable to any of those, then I think we must have hit the mark somewhere.
I'm sure there's a lot going, but a lot going on behind the scenes in that particular scene. But it turns out that the cat's the psychopath.
But then when you think about it, you think, God, of course it's the cat. Of course it's the cat. And I think that's why it's a really kind of satisfying twist. Some people may have issues with the cat killing Professor Telford. All I would say is he was one of the most evil people who ever lived. He killed millions of people. He was going to kill them. And cats kill things.
When Cat takes out Professor Telford, he does it with in a very clinical kind of way. But then, you know, I think it is true to character. I think it is. I think cats are like that.
I don't think anyone will think the worst of the cat. I think it's exactly what's needed at that point in the show, which is Doug's very good at. They go, was that out of character? No, of course not.
Look, I don't care what the scan says. We're the posse. Boys from the Dwarf. No one's switching sides here.
Boys from the Dwarf. And all the lads do it and all that. I think it's quite a poignant moment, you know. That was an ad-lib by me, like, doing that.
Boys from the Dwarf, you know? So that was another classic Red Dwarf-ism, thing that just happened spontaneously. You probably didn't even think about it at the time as something you're going to do for the fans, but it's something that your character would do.
Because of the very nature of Rimmer, there's still always an element of, you know, him being separate, you know, because he is the ultimate butt of the jokes, you know, he is the one, it's him against the rest, you know, him against the world sort of thing. But in certain situations, you know, when they kind of realise that they probably do need, all four of them do need each other, then Rimmer, yeah, they will all become one. They will unite and become the boys from the Dwarf, yeah.
In a way, there were, I felt, references to the kind of current refugee crisis as who do you let in and who do you not let in, or who do you take, or who do you save, or who do you help, and why not everyone, and why, you know, and all those arguments that go on there. And what about us? We're already here and we haven't got any money, so now you're bringing in more poor people. And it was really reflected, but it was all reflected through vending machines.
Well, I like those shows where we don't go off the ship. It's no adventures. It's about the relationships and how we all get on. So I quite like those episodes.
It was the opening scene, wasn't it, where Rimmer is sitting at his desk in the sleeping quarters, and I didn't realise that's what I remember him doing. He was doing sort of work, but he was signing his name.
I think it was sort of sets of accounts for Thames TV from way back when. In the moments of downtime, I just sort of thought I'd do my signature, and as I'm in the mind of A.J. Rimmer, it's A.J. Rimmer's signature and not C.J.B.'s signature.
I'm sitting there and trying to be all presidential, and because I've got the gloves on, which are very spongy, so holding a small thing like a pen is quite complicated, and it doesn't really move, so I was trying to write, but all it just came out was a sort of kid scribbling on a bit of paper.
The show Doug was quite worried about, and I thought it was very funny, actually. He was worried it was a little cartoony, the first draft, that it was unreal, and obviously we'd done quite a lot of vending machines and things like that in Series 10. But he had a bit of time away from it, and then during pre-production or production of Series 11, he reread it and said, oh, actually, I really like it. I really don't think it's far away. And I pleaded with him to put Talkie Toaster in it, and he wouldn't do it, And I said, I'm telling you, that's a key moment to have Talkie Toaster. It will get big laughs, and it felt valid. It didn't feel like he'd just been shoehorned in.
There was a tough scene for Craig in the ship's garbage hold where Talkie Toaster has been for that was great as well. Talkie Toaster had been there, I think, for 26 years, which is the last time Talkie Toaster appeared. So we weren't making that up. That was the actual time. Talkie Toaster hasn't been on screen. He'd been down there on his own, not doing any toast. And then, of course, we got David Ross to do it. Now, David Ross, first person to ever play Crichton, is now, I think, sort of effectively retired. But he came back and he gave us his talkie beautifully.
No, I'm fine, thank you. Why, would you like some toast?
They come back to me after 20-something years since I first did it. I'd forgotten what the voice was, but they sent me a recording of it. I got it off pat, I think, so that's all right. I mean, when I tell people I was the original Crichton, they are so impressed, you know. They love the original Crichton, because I had a very, very posh English accent, whereas Robert Llewellyn has a Canadian accent. But I did it terribly posh. So I kind of enjoyed it, and people would say, oh my God, were you the original Crichton? I said, yeah, I was. Because they didn't know it was me, really, because you can't see it's me under that mask, you know. So it's a great thing to be associated with, I must admit.
And the fact says David Ross played the original Crichton, but he made a point of remembering his lines. So you don't keep the job. Don't keep the job.
Crichton is a kind of more gentle, more caring character that is concerned about dignity and honesty and decency. Nah, not when there's power at stake. He becomes a lying scumbag, just the same as Rimmer.
Vote for me, and I will set you free.
It's a comedy spray. I should be doing it, Doug. What the smeg is going on?
It's a show of sort of corporate power being taken to almost the ultimate level, where they start sort of, you know, charging you with time in your life.
It is a worry that organisations can have, and as they spread, such a massive impact on society. That's a little idea it started from. And we wanted to do something, it's a bit darker, I think.
This very sanitized looking set, very white, blue outfits, blue plastic shoes to wear on the set so we don't spoil stuff. And I'm sitting up in makeup with Helen George, who's getting ready to go downstairs and blah, blah, blah. And I say to her, you know, she's going, and I said, well, I wouldn't worry too much about that. You'll get a new scene as you hit the floor. And of course, the first thing she does, she comes down on set and Doug hands her a new scene. Or should I just say, an amended scene. It was funny.
The character that I'm playing, Anita, is she's a sort of avatar robot character, but you have to sort of believe that she's real. She's not completely unhuman, but there's a tightness to her, and you almost feel as though the root of this evil company is within her. And there's a sense of her being so charming and so polite and lovely to everybody, but ultimately she's trying to get something for herself and she doesn't really care. We sort of imagined that she's almost one of those, there's a touch of her being one of those women that work on the desk in an airline, in an airport, when they're telling you really bad news about the fact that your plane won't be going for 30 hours, but they still have a smile on their face because they don't really care.
And I'm lying on an invisible bed and I knock over an invisible can of beer and fall over an invisible chair and stuff like this, and it's kind of like, so it's all sort of clever stuff.
I insisted that everything was filmed on glass or with glass or perspex so that we could see through and clean up reflections and, you know, be able to see into the hand as he's pouring the baked beans. And we just spent quite a while painting out all the reflections and just leaving the smear and the baked beans left. I'm not sure the artists are speaking to me much now, but it was a bit of a slog to paint it all out. But I think it works well in the end. You know, even when he gets off the bed, I remember at the time people saying, well, why is he not on the sofa on green screen and get off the bed like that? And it's like, well, the light doesn't bounce back. You don't want the light to bounce off the floor. You don't want him to be dark where the sofa would be.
This old man came out, this old, mad, old sort of Rastafarian hippie came out of the studio, and I honestly looked and I went, oh my God, it was honestly that. It was a couple of beats. I genuinely didn't know who it was. And then it was so brilliantly done, that makeup, because it was his ears. Because there's always this talk about you get bigger ears as you get older. His ears were just huge and they had hair in. Like, it was really grim. They were really grim. So I was just like staring and going, oh, your ears, oh!
We were able to find some old pieces of silicone which were made for other shows, but we could get them to fit on his face cast because we already had his cast because we had to make it into a Crichton. Whenever you put on a prosthetic, it's just a bland colour, and so once it's all on, you have to then decide which way you're going to go. And I had been briefed that he was about 106 years of age, so I was reckoning that he probably would have a fair amount of pigmentation in his skin. And so as you start going with it, and you're doing all of this, and you think, oh, his eyebrows would be a bit grayer, but he would have lost some, and you try and do things to make it look as real as possible. I showed him loads of images to Craig because I thought, you've got to wear this, and my idea was that he would be a little bit of a cool Rasta dude, that his beard would be quite a cool Rasta beard, and there was a sense of fun with it. I think that's what I wanted, a sense of fun.
It took me about 4 hours in makeup to become 127. They should have just got me Sunday morning after a gig and a night out. But for one scene, Ray Peacock's in it, our indefatigable warm-up man. He plays Steve.
Of all the warm-up men we've ever had on a studio audience night for Red Dwarf, Ray is, well, he's the best. You know, there's absolutely no doubt about that. He just seems to have a brilliant knack of making the whole evening just seamless.
Ray's finest moment, probably the pinnacle of his career. It's downhill from now on. So, and of course, he was so thrilled. I mean, I've got a part, I'm being Steve.
Say it as a joke, and I'd wander onto air and say, oh, imagine if there was a new character, a little homeless man who was been on board the ship all the time. Hey, I could just come in like Fonz. In the middle of a scene, just go, hey! You say it as a joke, and then I was on set, we were on here and we were recording, and Richard came over, and I said, do you know what, I think I should be in this, like playing with the audience and stuff. And then he just whispered to me and said, we're going to put you in it. And I thought they were just being nice, which was appreciated on its own. And then the script just come through. And there's an amazing thing where the script came through and it was Doug's, I was going to say Doug's writing, it wasn't, he doesn't handwrite it, it was typed out. But it said Steve, and then it said brackets, Ray Peacock, question mark. And I think, I really like that, I might frame that.
Ganymede and tights, and yes sir, I've been around. Ain't no place.
Mister, stop singing.
Yes sir, in a set.
I'm only humming. Well, don't hum.
Yeah, and the last scene, we've run out of time on the night, because every time you run over on the set, you see, in front of a live audience, it costs you thousands of pounds. So we finished that time on 10 and picked it up. But we did a recreation of the very first scene in Red Dwarf. Lister with the cigarette in his ear, eating the pie, pushing the shopping cart, Rimmer with his clipboard, blah, blah, blah. And although we were in costume, we went back away and came back and filmed it again in costume. Although we weren't in costume, the audience got it straight away.
The audience immediately picked up on it because they know Red Dwarf better than we probably do.
They go back to the days when they heard that the first time and they think, right, I was in my digs at uni, and I remember that, you can see them all laughing about where they were at that time or whatever. You could definitely see that affected them.
The nice thing that Doug's done in these whole two series, 11 and 12, it kind of nods to the past, A lot of our fans now weren't even born when it first went out and stuff like that, so it's quite nice to deal with the genealogy of the whole show and the history of the show.
1 minute, it's the future of Red Dwarf, as you can see from the sleeping quarters here. Yeah, this was and then you look around this way, and this is the nostalgic side of the job.
You can see how far we've come in a way, because over there looks like a film set, and over there looks like it's been put together with blue tack and a bit of grey paint, and you can actually see how much we've sort of grown up, and how we've gone from kind of black and white to colour. It's a lifetime, I mean, these are career-defining roles for all of us in many ways, and to see that, it's like, wow, it's kind of like your professional life, because Red Dwarf was my first ever job as an actor as well, so you kind of look at both ends of your professional life.
It was funny because I wondered if Keith would go, you must be joking, I'm not making a set that looks like that. But he didn't. He didn't mind. He didn't mind me going, no, that's a bit too good. Can you make that a bit worse?
It's nice to do it, but I think for me, the grey was very flat, if I'm honest, in the original series. So I think this time round, we just decided we would just texture it a little bit and just make the flattage look less flat and give it a bit more interest and a bit more detail, but keep being very sympathetic to the overall feel and tone of it. Trying to resource things was a little bit tricky because things don't exist. So we've had to have the little blue seats remade. I found a company to do those for me. We had the duvet covers remade by a company. And then obviously it's about sort of gathering and collating the finite details then to make it feel like the original.
He really captured the flavour of it. And in fact, you can hear when the audience actually go, oh, as they walk into the old sleeping quarters.
That really was sort of like a sort of throwback into Series 1 land with obviously Mac McDonald and Norman Lovett, coming back and an opportunity to wear the old H, which, fortunately, my neck muscles could survive the weight of it, you know.
Although Norman was back, I never got to act with him, but he was great to have him around.
It's lovely just to be back to just this episode. It's a lovely scene, a good, funny scene. Yeah, it's great, it's great. And they were saying to Chris, when I'm revealed there, that's going to be a noise there, so Chris won't be able to say his line until they've stopped. And he knows about that because Doug told him when he was directing the run-through this morning. But yeah, I'm looking forward to that, it's nice.
This is just Red Dwarf. I thought it was going to quantum skip somewhere good.
He got the justifiable reaction, I think, because he, you know, his first appearance and his first line, you know, I had to wait for quite some time before I could say anything. I don't know what they're going to do about that.
Norman Lovett was smuggled onto the set so the audience couldn't see him. Now, I was upstairs getting changed into the rat costume. We're up there, it was like an earthquake. The laugh for Norman, his first line. Right, Arnold. No, it was Morning, Arnold. And the rumble in backstage of the audience laughing was incredible.
I was actually standing near Norman watching him, so I was round the back of the set and he was in his little box with his black pony neck on. When he was introduced, that was fabulous. The audience just went bananas when, you know, all right, dudes.
We could have all gone on at a tea break for waiting for that laugh to die when Norman said, hello, Arnold. Simple as that. And massive, massive, massive laugh. And we recreate that whole Dead Dave scene, but they're all alive now.
He's dead, Dave. Everybody's dead, Dave. Everybody is dead, Dave. And now I'm doing it with Arnold. It's really, everybody's alive. It's a clever idea, Doug. I said it at a convention when I said, I'm not really a sci-fi fan, and they boo. I mean, light-hearted boos. Although I must say, I saw Series 10, and yeah, I thought it was back on track. I thought, yeah, it's back on track now. They made a film called Serenity, and I watched the whole film and loved it. And then I watched some of the Firefly episodes and I thought, oh, this is good. So I'm a bit sci-fi.
I was on to writing, I think, show 10, when he wrote to me and said, people are asking, am I in these new Red Dwarf series? And I went, I didn't know you wanted to be, Norm. I've written 10 of them, and so probably not in the first 10, but if you're around and want to be in them, I'll certainly try and get you in one of them.
I'm just delighted to have done this for the history of Red Dwarf and stuff, to just turn up in an episode. And it's a great scene with Chris I do there in the corridor. So that's fantastic. I'm delighted. I'm happy. I'm happy.
My name is Winston Churchill. I had one monster speech and it had to be delivered at speed. And so, you know, I learned it and had it all ready. And when I walked in the door on the day of the shoot, the AD said, "Hi, Mac, great to see you. Here's the sides. They've completely changed everything." So I'm looking at this speech, and it's like nothing I've seen before. I got like an hour and a half maybe before we're going. So it was like, okay. The fact for all actors is that as you get older, you find lines more difficult to remember. It's just, that's the way it is. Your short-term memory goes out the window. See, I forgot my name when you asked me what my name was. Thing with Red Dwarf, which is great, which is Doug's always thinking about it right up to when the cameras turn over. And if he thinks of something funny, then you got to be on your feet and ready to, you know, play with that.
It was a lovely moment when John Pomfrey was our lighting director many years ago in the early days of Red Dwarf. Always a sweet, lovely guy. When, you know, his nickname was the Prince of Darkness because he lit lower than, you know, in those days, TV, you know, a TV studio was dazzlingly bright. He worked out that you could tone it down a bit to make it look better, and, you know. So, but the cameraman would go, well, I can't see anything on that. They're all like Johnny Vegas cameramen. I can't see any picture. There's nothing there. It's too dark. Prince of Darkness.
It was absolutely brilliant to see him, and to see him on such good form, and to see him taking such an interest in the show, and which he clearly has throughout the time he hasn't been involved with it, and to hear him talking about the days, you know, the different The analog days, the sort of high-tech days we're in now, and to see him talking so energetically with Ed about the various different lighting plans you can have and the ways to achieve them and all that was a real thrill.
Series 1 bunk room, Ed used the same gel, coloured gel that you shine lights through, that John Pumphrey used to shine the light through that window. That's because Ed's a bit of an anorak, really, you know, so he's gone and researched all of that, you know, probably took colour samples. He hasn't got much to do, really, you know. You've got to have a hobby, Ed. But he did all that as a nod to John Pumphrey, which just shows you the esteem that John's thought of.
I guess Lister or someone had smuggled a rat on board, not a cat, and that had turned into a huge sort of ratus sapien, which of course was Danny in a rat costume.
The rat was quite horrible, you know? He gave it such gusto, and he gave it that right voice.
You know, there was so much to think of, like the eyes are up here, so you can't just look at the person like that. And your eye hole is at the end of your snout there. So I'm basically, you know, so not only that, but then you've got to tilt down so you can't actually see them because you want the eyes to look. So all of this was going on, and of course you can imagine you're under this thing, you've got a microphone under there, you've got all this stuff, and it's all clipped on, and then you're bending down, cutting off your windpipe, you know, and then talking in a very forced, you know, deliberate voice, you know, which is 3 octaves lower than the cat.
I mean, I think I've got damaged hearing in my right ear because he was standing next to me doing his kind of, you know, fitness instructor, dance instructor, you know, yeah! But it was funneled, so it's like if you were to shout down someone's ear using you know, the middle of a Blu-ray holder, so you're containing all the sound. Well, the mask of the rat was sort of like that. His head was back here, had a hole that was the rat's mouth. So when he went, yeah, like that, to me, it was like, oh, God, right in my ear. And we corpsed so many times.
I could feel Robert next to me shaking with, like, trying to hold himself from laughing, and Craig actually did just go. He just, you know, head in hand, can't take it anymore.
Yeah. At one stage, he goes to hit the gong with his tail and misses, and I just, I don't know, I just couldn't keep it in. I don't really corpse on set much, especially during a scene, but I could not stop laughing. I was tears rolling down my face.
Would you,
And I did a little extra jig and did a lot of Michael Jackson swing, and then thought, oh my God, it rang. And I thought, that's great. How did they time that? The sound effect. I thought it was amazing. It was so perfect. And I was like, afterwards, I said to Ricky, the sound man, I said, Rick, I said, man, that was perfect timing. He goes, we didn't do anything. What? He goes, that was actually the tail hitting the gong. Eh? He's all warm and cuddly.
Was 12 episodes too many? I would say no. It's a very, very difficult show, whether you make 6 or 12. There were definite advantages to making 12. We were able to save in certain areas. Having everyone together, it made sense.
I thought it was going to be. Doug wouldn't agree. Doug would say it was too many. But I think that we were so in our stride that, and we'd all got so used to being together, we actually then started to feel like we were sad to finish.
It was always going to be hard work. We've come, as we kept, particularly Craig kept saying on studio nights, 28 years. You know, we've done it so long now that we kind of know what kind of rigours we're going to have to be prepared for.
So you've got Monday afternoon, then you've got a Tuesday rehearsal, and then you're filming on the Wednesday and the Thursday, and you're live on the Friday. So, you know, you're doing all this in 4.5 days.
I definitely don't think Red Dwarf will ever be filmed one episode in 5 days ever again. I think we've proved now that that's just not realistic for a 30-minute time slot.
A rehearsal week that gives you time to breathe and catch your breath, smell the roses, and I think that would benefit the show. And also, having said that though, that morale, the guys were having a ball.
I would have kept on going, you know. I mean, it was nice, because we had a break in between, you know, we had like a 3-week break in between. And, you know, to me, I didn't see a problem. It was very tiring. But if we're going to get all these done before we're all too fat and old and grey and knackered and raddled, then we've got to get a wiggle on, you know.